Scott, the school opening has become almost a sort of a metaphor for reopening the economy in general. And that's a point that President Trump keeps making. If you don't have the schools open, you can't open the economy because parents are stuck with their kids at home. So his point is that, and I want to ask you whether that's true, that the teachers that are 60 or 65, they're the at-risk group. We need to protect those. But kids in general, statistically, are at far less risk. But now we're hearing anecdotal evidence about Kawasaki's and all kinds of immune problems that can occur with kids. If you could protect the teachers, is it an acceptable risk for young people to be going back to school, Scott? Because if they don't, then we're back to the whole argument about whether we were trying to bend the curve or whether we were going to shut down the country until there was 0 cases of COVID-19 again. Right? I mean, those are the two sides of the argument. The side that wants to reopen says, look, we never said that there was never going to be another case of COVID-19. We said that we were going to have the hospitals not overwhelmed, and then we'll look back and see what to do at that point. So do you think the schools should open in September, Scott? I mean, if they don't, the economy's not going to be open. And then you're back to how many people are going to have major problems, not from the virus, but from not having a job and not going for medical procedures and everything else.
Right. Well, look, the decision around the schools is something that should be made locally, depending on what's happening in a local region or within a state. If the disease is epidemic within a state or a local community, the decision is probably going to be made to close the schools. I don't think this is a national level decision at this point, what we do in the fall with respect to the schools. This comes out of learning that we have from the flu, that when you close the schools in the setting of a flu epidemic, it reduces the scope and the duration of the flu epidemic. We don't know that that's true for coronavirus because we don't understand how much coronavirus is spreading among children, just what the rate is of infection among kids. We do believe that kids are getting infected with the coronavirus, but we don't yet have data to suggest what the rate is. There was a study in Science, which I talked about on the show, that showed that kids would probably have about a third of the susceptibility to coronavirus as adults. That seemed to be a good study. So kids are probably getting infected, but at a much lower rate than adults. And as far as this condition that we're seeing, this inflammatory condition in Kawasaki's, it does appear to be correlated based on the fact that there's a rising incidence in the kids who have had this condition, had COVID, either have active infection or have antibodies to COVID. But we don't know yet whether there is true correlation there. So we need to learn that as well, because that's obviously going to inform how we look at the risk to kids as well, if in fact this condition is correlated to COVID-19. It's suggestive. The evidence is suggestive now, but we haven't been able to prove that yet.
But, Doctor, before we let you go, what would you do with your own kids?
It'll be based on what's happening in my local community. I mean, I continued to send my kids to school through February while I was concerned this was spreading because there wasn't an outbreak in my local community. But once we had an outbreak in the local community, that prompted my concern. And the schools made a prompt decision to close the schools in that setting. This is really going to depend on what's happening in the states and localities. And it's really too early to say what September is going to look like. I do think we're going to have to contend with COVID going into the fall. But it might not be in September. It might occur later into the fall, and we should at least make an attempt to open the schools if this isn't spreading widely.